Right, he couldn't hear me. I'm thinking he's not responding. Is something not right? And it's because I was on mute. But anyway, right, yes, I'll start the session now.
Thank you. Okay, we'll just give everybody a second to come in through our virtual door. Always that. So just to explain, everyone thinking, hang on a minute, that doesn't look like Shane. Has he changed his hair? What's gone on there? So Shane, our sales director, who normally does this session, is unfortunately unexpectedly not well today. So hoping he is better soon. He's never off sick ever. So you know when he's not in this, he's really not good at all. So you are stuck with me today, but I'm actually quite pleased about that because that means I get to do this with Andy. And I love presenting with you, Andy, because there's always so much that we get from this, and everybody watching as well. I know what they're going to get out this next hour, and it is really exciting. Talking about professional landlord buy-to-let opportunities, and there are still so many. The buy-to-let market's challenging at the minute. I think that's the word for it, isn't it, Andy?
It is. Yeah.
It is a challenging market at the minute, but completely navigable. And if you have that information to then be able to speak to your clients about, and really sort of give them some information and ideas that you perhaps wouldn't have done before, you are in the right place. So let me introduce the new head of sales for Zephyr Homes, Mr. Andy Rowe. Congratulations on your promotion, head of sales. So we're lucky to have you with us today. What I'm going to do is, as always, I'm going to hand over, let you do your slides and talk us through things. But as always, if you've got any questions that you want to ask as we're going through, just put them in the Q&A. And Andy, are you happy if we sort of chip in with questions, or do you want to do them at the end?
100%. No, let's do it as we go, Nick, because it always makes it really engaging and interactive, and I love all of that, as you know. So let's as many questions as possible, please.
Fantastic. Well, you know what our sessions are like. Our brokers are fabulous. It's always interactive. We always have lots and lots of questions. So I'm going to hand over to you, and then what we'll do is, if we get any questions, I'll come back in and ask. But yeah, anything you see that you're not sure of or you want more information, Andy's your guy, and he is very, very knowledgeable in this area. And also as well, when we're talking about, I know we're talking about buy-to-let opportunities, but also as well things like multi-unit freehold blocks, HMOs. All of that is Andy's bag. So use this to really get the most out of. We've got a really nice group on today. So over to you, Andy.
I've got some exciting stuff too. I'm so excited. I don't know if I'm going to get it all in, Nick. I'm going to have to go at 150 miles an hour because I've got loads to talk about. So first and foremost, let's talk about a little bit who we are. Who are Zephyr Home Loans? Just really quickly, we're an award-winning specialist buy-to-let lender, which is great news. But we're part of Computershare, which is globally a massive business. And then within the UK, we have Computershare Loan Services, which is a big back book and servicing partner for other lenders as well, like Vida, for instance. If you do a loan with Vida and it completes, then we take on the servicing model after that and service that debt for them. Within Computershare Loan Service, we then have Topaz. I'm going to talk a little bit about Topaz in a minute, but Topaz is a back book lender that manages loads of back backbooks. So things like Mortgage Express, Bradford and Bingley, Northern Rock, all of that sort of stuff. And it's all been rebranded now. So it's brands like Hesselite and Rezinka and Jasper and all this kind of stuff. But we've got all of that going on as well. And then at the front of that, we've got Zephyr Home Loans, which is an origination buy-to-let lender. And we're going to get into some of the stuff that we do today. But we also own the DPS, which is the Deposit Protection Service. Fabulous business. There are several deposit protection holding schemes in the PRS around the UK. The DPS is the largest. We've got about 1.8 million client funds under management. So we get a lot of data out of the market about what's going on just generally around. So we're going to touch on some of that on the way through these slides today. So that's a quick whistle-stop tour of who we are. I've been around since 2018. 2022, massive year. Obviously, the stamp duty freeze just meant volumes went through the roof. You know, we were doing over 100 applications a day. Glad to say we had no service blips because we've got this big servicing team behind us, but it was just a bonkers time. And then obviously when the trust mini budget came out, the world went a little bit crazy. So what's happened since then? I was just on a call before this actually with some brokers, and we were talking about the swap rate market, and there's a lot of confusion around what goes on in that market. But in effect, in simple terms, guys, there are in two sort of funding models. One is the swap rate funded wholesale market, and the other one is the retail funded market, right? So you've got retail funded players like Paragon and Fleet that have got a retail funded background, and then you've got wholesale players like us. And we borrow our money in from the wholesale market. So when the swap rate market started going, it was a bit like a heart attack, a heart monitor in heart attack. It was sort of going up at a crazy rate. It made it really, really difficult for people to price, because you could be pricing today, like for us, for instance, we have rates available today, but we actually fund at the point of offer. So, you could be in a situation where you're pricing today, and by the time you get to offer, with the way the rates were going, that deal could be underwater. So it made it really difficult for the swap rate players, which is why you see a lot of them really, really struggling to keep abreast and pulling rates out immediately without giving notice and all that kind of stuff. But what's really interesting now is the margin between swap rate funded lenders and retail funded lenders is really starting to shrink. There's a lot of pressure on our retail funded friends to be looking after the people who are putting the funds into the bank and making sure savers are getting a good return on the money. So you're seeing the market start to equalize a little bit again in terms of pricing. Really exciting for us. We repriced a couple of weeks ago, so we've got rates now from 364 in the 2-year space and 469 in the 5-year space. We've got a selection of fee options to allow for landlords that have challenged on the ICR. So we've got a 7% fee, but we go down to a 3% fee. We've also got an 80% product with no fee at 629. So, the market's starting to get a lot more competitive again, and it's great for players like us to be out competing and talking to you guys about what we offer. So that became a bit more than a whistle-stop tour, but it gives you a sense of where we're about. So first question is, Computershare Topaz. And a good chance to run the first poll, Nick, if we could. What position do you think we sit in the UK market in terms of size as a lender? Because probably most people have never heard of Topaz. Where do you think we sit? I don't know how long it would take to get some answers back in on this one, Nicola. But
okay, let's see. Hannah's running the poll in the background. So has that come up on screen? Can we see that? Yes, we are.
That is, I can see it. Yeah.
Go. So this poll, so Computershare / Topaz Finance is what position in the overall UK lender by size? Number 36, number 26, or number 16? I don't know the answer to this one, so I'm interested to see what the answer is. I'm interested to see what everybody thinks. So,
wow, you've got all of those big players out there, haven't you? You've got the HMOs group, and you've got it's just so many big players out there. And you look at a lender like us, and you go, "Well, never heard of you." So where are you? So it is an interesting question, I think.
Let's have you cast your votes. Let's see who's right. Should have made it interesting for a Friday. Had a $5 bet on there.
You see, there's probably a clue in the question, right? So we've got 57% at 16, which is spot on, actually. So that's great. So yeah, we're the biggest lender that nobody's ever heard of, Nick. So we've got all of these brands in the background. So established in 1988 by Skipton Building Society, Topaz was originally. HML went on to be the largest third-party administrator in the UK, providing services for lenders like Kensington and GMAT, which we've already touched on. And now a lot of the brands in the background, so you're obviously aware of Zephyr, but I've just mentioned some: Jasper, Heliodor, Rosar. And the interesting thing is, the guys on the call today and brokers out there generally come across these brands all the time, because clients have got mortgage statements from them and like, well, who the hell are these guys, right? And it's all sitting under that Topaz brand in the background, and a lot of that stuff comes back into us to look at. And people, especially recently, Nick, and I think this is an interesting point to make. Since base rates started going up, right, a lot of those old brands have been sitting on massively low rates for years and years and years and years and years, right? And now they're suddenly seeing this massive increase in rates in the background. So a lot of them are starting to become a little bit vocal again and reaching out to brokers. So there is opportunity in that back book for people to look to address where they're going, monthly payments going up. So yeah, good opportunity to check what's going on there. So a little bit about the size of us guys. So just want to now sort of just move across sideways slightly before we come back into criteria and just sort of talk a little bit about the DPS, because I think it's worth just touching on some of the stuff that we know about what's going on in the market. So we ran a survey actually a few months ago where we actually got a fantastic take-up on this. There's 2,620 landlords came back to us and gave us and filled in the survey. And 51% are considering selling a property, right? Now that's quite interesting. But actually, when you work all that out, most of that is in the amateur space. I'm one of those, right? So I've got a property that I let, but actually it's one property, and actually by the time you factor in tax position and all the rest of it, you make very little profit out of it, and you know, trying to manage it, and you think, well, where's the real value? So, you know, it wasn't a great shock to us that it's actually dinner party landlords that are looking generally to exit the market. And when you look at the professional landlord set, far more of them are not looking to sell. You know, there was a few undecided, and about 30% were looking to sell, but you know, the vast majority of the professional market is looking to stay. But interestingly, just coming back to how much money we have under management, that's not really changing. So the size of the market is not really changing. But you know, we also sort of, you know, as part of the survey, 10% were looking to buy property, and I think that's probably risen now. The market's settled. There's more confidence in the market. I do a lot of landlord events as well, Nick, where we talk directly to landlords about what their feelings are in the market space, and a lot of them are feeling a lot more confident now about where the market's going. So it does feel like the sort of green shoots of prosperity coming back into the space, and landlords looking to get in. I know we're still looking at a slightly smaller market this year, about 30 billion in the buy-to-let space. Obviously not as big as it's been in previous years, but you know, it's good that it's starting to come back. There's purchases coming back into the market, remortgages. PTs have dropped a little bit from where they were last year. So I just think overall it feels like there's a bit of buoyancy coming back. And I think those stats sort of speak to that a little bit.
I think you're right. Also,
sorry,
I was just going to say, just to echo that point, there's been so many changes over this last few years that landlords have had to get their heads, and actually brokers have had to get their heads around as well. And I think feels like we're coming out the other side of that as well. So that kind of sits separately to what's going on in the economy anyway, doesn't it? But it does feel like, you know, we're sort of, everyone's got their head around it, they know where they sit in that now. So lots of changes that came up, you know, even with the PRA changes and all of that that's happened really.
Yeah, it's been ongoing. I mean, you know, just generally, you know, don't want to be political here, but landlords gone through a difficult time for 7-8 years now, right? 9 years. So there's been a lot of change and a lot of legislative change that landlords have had to get their head around. And we're going to talk about HMOs as we go through the slides today. But you know, talking to landlords, you know, they're trying to get a handle on. And I've done a lot of events where there's been like local authorities present as well, talking about the problems they see with bad housing stock and how they want to try and regulate the space, etc. But I think, you know, a lot of landlords now are plugging into events. We do all sorts of things all over the shop, right? And you get so many landlords come and talk to you afterwards about, you know, really want to understand what's going on. You know, what's the difference between SPV lending and non-SPV lending, and what's the difference between, you know, HMO and non-HMO, and what you're offering our blocks, and what are the things I need to think about. So there is this you know, talk to your landlords, guys. I think there's so much opportunity to engage, and we've got a number of brokers around the country that run their own events for their landlords, and they get speakers in.
I was just going to say that. I was just exactly going to say that, Andy. I know of brokers that do that. They'll put an event on, you know, an evening, maybe in their offices, or they'll hire somewhere, a few drinks and nibbles. It's very low in cost, but landlords are thirsty for this knowledge, and they're not getting it from anywhere else, are they? I think that's the big point. They're not. Nobody else is giving them what brokers can and do in terms of knowledge and education.
Yeah, I mean, some of the events I've attended, they've had solicitors, they've had surveyors, they've had mortgage lenders, they've had second charge lenders, development lenders, all sorts of stuff going on. So the landlords can plug in and go, well, actually, you know, I've always played in the 3-bed semi space. What other opportunities are there? I don't really know about HMOs. I'm really frightened of all the licensing. Can somebody talk to me about that? Or, you know, should I do a bit of development work? How does that work? And, you know, where can I learn? So, yeah, excellent opportunity to plug the opportunities in the market, but also then help your landlords get the confidence to grow their business and work with you, which ultimately is great for your business as a broker, right? So, you know, talking about the theme of the day, where are the opportunities? I think there's a massive opportunity of that. And I've got one of my brokers did their first event beginning last year, and there was about 30 people, and they do them every quarter, and they're now well into the 100, you know, people coming along, and they I go and there's like people turn up, don't even know they are, but they found out about my event and they're here, you know, and that tells you all you want to know, I think. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
and just a little top tip for everybody, you know, if you want to know how to organise one of those, you know, just give me or Andy a shout. We'll definitely help with the things like you can ask solicitors, estate agents, and various people to actually contribute to the event. So it's not even costing you. So effectively, you can put a free event on where you've just got all of these new leads. But yeah, if you want to know more, then obviously me and Andy would be happy to talk to you. But I detract from your presentation. Sorry.
no, it's absolutely bang on. So yeah, no, it's good. Well, just staying in the DPS world, right? So this is interesting as well. So I always talk about this, Nick, and I probably said it here before, but I'm going to say it again because I just think it speaks to where we're at in the market, right? There's been some real shocks going on in the rental space over the last 12 months for me personally. I looked at rental prices in Norwich, and the cost, I was like, I'm like, we're not in London, guys. What's going on, right? But there's so many people now, especially young couples, that are looking for city centre, nicely appointed properties where they can get in. They don't need a car because they're city centre. They don't have children, right? They're happy to pay some of the increases that are going on. And we know that 75% of landlords are looking to increase their rent. But here's a thought, right? So my bungalow, which I still haven't sold, which is doing my head in, by the way, but I took it off. My tenant exited in May last year, right? So it's been on the market since May, and she was at market value when she left, which was 795, right? I spoke to the letting agent just before Christmas, said, look, I haven't sold it yet. And they're like, well, it's getting more positive. We think, you know, and well, I know that anyway, right? Because I'm in the space, but they're like, you know, we think going out into May, and it's still up for sale. But they said, if you let it 1250, 1300 all day long, how much? A huge increase, right? Now, obviously part of the problem there is you've got a cap on how much you can increase rent for your current tenant, and we know that, right? But you know, again, I've talked to landlords, and we're not advocating this, by the way, guys. I'm just telling you what's going on in the market, right? But I was talking to a landlord in London. He was telling me that when his tenants get to the end of their tenancy agreement, takes them out, and then he reviews where that property's at, and then he remarks it at the open market value. So that's how he's dealing with his problem, and that's not right for all things. And you know, we're not advocating kicking tenants out all over the country, but you know, the simple reality is rents are going up, and we're seeing landlords now start to execute that in terms of what they're doing with their property portfolio. So that's helping the affordability model as well, of course, right? I mean, pricing's it's slipped down a little bit from where it got out to, which is great from an ICR perspective. Lenders like us are offering multiple fee options, so that helps with the ICR, because you can't just go, well, I'm going to give you a 2% discount on the rate, but we're not going to up the fee, because then you're underwater on the deal. And I was challenged with a broker on that the other day, and I'm like, you know, there are margins for all of our businesses, guys, that we need to consider, right? We've got to pay people like me and all the other stuff that goes on, and you need to build that margin in, which is why lenders are saying, well, we can give you a lower rate to help the ICR, but we've got to pick that up somewhere else, and that's the fee. So, you know, lenders like us giving a scope of fee. So I think there's lots of things going on that are just generally helping landlords' ability to finance and fund and grow their business. So I think it's quite exciting, really, that it feels like it's that buoyancy back. So staying in the DPS, right, but looking at opportunity. So next poll, Nick, what percentage of private rented properties in the UK, according to our survey, and I've checked this out, by the way, when I've gone out to speak to landlords, is HMO? And we get loads of inquiries over at Zephyr Towers on HMOs, as I'm sure lots of HMO player lenders do. But it'd be interesting to see what the guys think on this.
Again, I don't know the answer to this, and I am intrigued. I wouldn't even know where to go on this, because on the one hand, you think, I can't be that many. Can't be. Think of all the just individual houses and the housing stuff. But then on the other hand, I'm thinking, everywhere I'm looking, everybody I'm talking to now is like HMOs. They're just, and of course the return that they give to landlords as well, compared to your conventional buy-to-lets. And the market's there for them. The people that want to live in HMOs, it's never been stronger either. So I don't know. Just say it says panelists can't vote, so I can't vote. But I don't. What would I?
Well, you can vote because you can just say what you think.
Say what I think. All right. Do you know what? I am gonna sit on the fence, and I'm gonna go with the middle one, 8%, because I can't believe that it's 42% is massive, but 1% feel. I don't know. I'm gonna go 8%.
Okay, that's good shout. Okay, let's see what our oh, you're in with the masses, Nick, at 8%. So that was a really good shout. Are you ready for this?
I don't know. Come on.
1%.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know what? Right. When this statistic came through, I was like, that can't be right, because I get probably 40% of the inquiries I get on in my daily job are HMOs. So I was thinking, I know we're a specialist lender and we do HMOs, so that's why. But it's got to be 20, 30%. It's got to be. I was like you. I couldn't quite work it out. And then when I saw the stat, I was like, wow. But it's interesting, right? So 60% of the market is a terrace house. That's probably no shock to anyone. But only 1% are HMOs. So when I go out and do landlord event, I get them all to put their hands up. And I go, right, put your hands down if you haven't got an HMO. They will go down again. You might have one left up, typically in a room of 100 people. And I've done this 5 or 6 times, and I always get the same results. So I know this stat is bang on the money as well, right? And then when I talk to landlords, they say to me, licensing, legislation, rules, regulations. I'm like, well, would you play football and turn up without your football boots? If you're going to be on a football pitch and play football, you've got to have the full kit, you've got to have your boots, and you've got to have your team. In other words, if you're going to play in the buy-to-let space, why not just be in the buy-to-let space and understand what it's all about, right? And for me, I think HMOs represent a fantastic opportunity. And I know it's difficult to get into HMO because a lot of lenders don't lend to first-time HMO landlords because there is stuff to think about, right? There's complexity around it that you've got to be aware of. But I think from a broker's perspective, the education thing moves along the line, right? You guys talking to your landlords and giving them confidence to understand what the HMO space is really all about, from licensing, selective licensing, additional licensing, Article 4. What is all this stuff, right? And how does it affect me? And what have I got to know? Once you know, you know. And if you know, go and play, right? So I think it's exciting. So a couple of things I want to talk about around the HMO market. So I did this slide just before Christmas, actually, because I was doing a landlord event, funnily enough, in London, and I wanted to talk about the HMO space. And I just picked on Chelmsford. Don't ask me why. I clearly have an affinity with Chelmsford, but I picked on Chelmsford. And the average value of a 4-bed house in Chelmsford, I actually, talking to brokers earlier, and I said 375 for some reason. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's the average price 575, right? And that is just an average property in Chelmsford, 4 beds, right? So standard AST rental value, when I did these slides, which, all right, it was 3 or 4 months ago, but 1850, right? Versus an HMO of 2,500. That's a big leap, right? So if you just, and I did this at 5.75. So again, you can see this slide's a little bit out of date and it could probably do with updating. But the point is, right, is if you go from personal name on an AST to SPV, right, as an HMO, it's about a 22% lift in borrowing capacity. That's massive.
It's huge, right? Isn't it? It's huge.
It is. When you talk about ICR challenges, there's a fix straight away, right? HMO. But what else is going on? Well, you got more cash flow into your business. £650 a month more coming in. Rental voids. If you've got an AST on a property and your tenant moves out, you've got 100% void. If you've got 4 people in a house and 1 person moves out, you've only got a 25% void. Yeah. So look, we're not suggesting that the whole market flip and becomes HMO, but what we're saying is there's opportunity here for people that are really in the space that that are looking to build their portfolios. There's an opportunity to potentially think about diversifying, right, and not just stay in lane. I mean, I know if I go back to when I was advising Nick, which was about 300 years ago, but all of my landlords were like, I do 3-bed semis, or I do 2-bed bungalows. There's that really sort of insular sort of blinkered thinking, but I do think landlords now are starting to think out of the box. So anyway, I think that's useful information. Hopefully the guys on the call will appreciate that as well. So so obviously larger yields, increased LTV, reduced risk for void. So moving on then, want to get into SPVs, and I'm really excited about this bit, which is why I kind of shimmied along. So I want to really get into the SPV bit today, because I know we do SPV clinics, don't we? And we get a million questions. So I'm hoping we get some questions off the back of this, because I've got a lot to talk about. But what's the size of the SPV market, do we think? Now, we can only give this is a Zephyr Towers statistic. So obviously, if you speak to a lender that doesn't do SPVs, there'll be 100% of just personal lending. But we do SPVs. How much do you reckon? And again, this is interesting to get your thoughts on this, Nick, because obviously you've got a lot of information on Knowledge Bank.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what you think on this one.
Right. Okay. So this is SPVs. See, it is popular, isn't it? And when we do our criteria clinics on like limited company lending, they're always really, really popular. I hate to, see, do you know what? I think I'm going to go. I hate that when people just go in the middle every time, but I think I am going to go 58% because 80% does seem high. But then I think so many people have made that change. We know when it came in, the portfolio and everything like that, when the changes came into place, kind of feels like it's sort of the wheat from the chaff a lot, didn't it? So you've got people that were, that weren't portfolio landlords that now were, they're putting them into limited companies, as well as those that were already setting up in that. I am going to go 58%. I'm going to stick with that because I think it is high. I think it's high. I think it's, as you say, obviously for Zephyr, skewed a little bit because obviously you're specialist in that. So of course the inquiries are going to come to you. But yeah, I'm going to go 58%.
Okay, good shout. Let's see what the guys have said.
Ooh,
that's interesting. That's a split right down the middle. That's really interesting. Well, okay, so let's talk about this. That's really interesting, actually. I really like that. So when we launched, 22% of our applications were SPVs. As of today, 80% of our applications are SPVs. And as a consequence of the change, 58% of our back book is now SPV lending, which is why we put those three figures in there. So it's quite interesting. So yeah, massive shift into the SPV space, right? So want to talk about SPVs. Oh my God, I've got loads to talk about. First bit is a little bit of criteria. So we've got 4 rules. You know these, Nick, so I'm going to bore you. I apologize. We've got 4 rules, right? Rule number, and I love our rules. I think they're great. And you'll understand why. Rule number 1, all directors must be on the application, whether they have a shareholding or not. Rule number 2 is those shareholders between them must own a minimum of 60% of the company. Rule number 3 is shareholders that are not directors do not go on the application. And rule number 4 is those non-director shareholders cannot own more than 20%. Why do I think they're great rules? I'm going to give you 2 quick case studies. One's real, one's fake. First one's real. We had 5 brothers. They were all from the UAE. 4 brothers were living in London and with permanent rights to reside. So they set up an SPV, 20% shareholding each, but the 4 brothers in the UK were the directors. So they went on the application. They signed the PGs and took independent legal advice, right? Now, the 5th brother was still in the UAE. So he was a shareholder, but not a director. So he's in the company, but we don't underwrite him. We don't look at him at all because it's like having shares in Tesco's, right? You just got some shares, right? You're not liable for all the debts going on. So we don't underwrite them. They don't go on the application. But he was the big earner. So what he was doing was sending money from the UAE into the UK through the banking system. So we could see it was all legitimate funds coming in. And then they were using that money to build their SPV down in London. So that worked really, really well because we don't lend to foreign nationals and we don't lend to expats, but we didn't need to in this case because he was just a shareholder. The other one I do is it's actually changed now because my daughter's just gone over 21, but I pick on me and my partner, my son and my daughter. So me and my partner could be 30% shareholding directors in a limited company. We'd be underwritten, sign the PGs, etc. My son is a seafarer, doesn't pay UK tax. He's domiciled in the UK for tax, but he doesn't pay it. So we wouldn't lend to him. And at the time I used to talk about this, my daughter was under 21. She just turned 21 and now I'm destitute because that was expensive, as you know. But the great thing about that is they could be shareholders. They're not underwritten. We don't look at them, but they're now property owners as well, right? They're not first-time landlords anymore because they're in a limited company and they own this property. Now, there are pluses and pros and cons to that, depending on stamp duty thinking and all the rest of it, which we won't go into today. But but opportunity there for people that are doing IHT planning. You might have a couple of kids that you want to put in, or 3 or 4 kids that you want to put in, 10% shareholding each, 4 children, mum and dad are the shareholding directors. Lots of things to think about there that could be really useful for people. But I wanted to get into incorporation a little bit today, and a new thing that we've got. So you're hearing it first here on Knowledge Bank, which I'm really excited about. So firstly, let's talk about incorporation. We might get some questions on this, Nick. So obviously you can take a property and put it into a limited company, right? And this comes up a lot when we have our Q&As, doesn't it?
It always does,
yeah. Yeah, it always does. So you move, let's say you've got a property, 200 grand, you put it in a limited company, you need 75% lending. So we create a 75% loan within the limited company, and you buy the property, you pay any capital gain and any stamp duty when it goes in. What you can do for tax efficiency is create a director's loan within the limited company. So now owes you 50 grand. That's great, because you can take that out as loan repayments, which are untaxable, and you can charge a limited company interest, which is taxable, but it's reducing your profit in your limited company, so reducing your corporation tax bill, and you're just paying reduced tax on the interest coming out. There's lots of great things about doing that, right? But what if you've got a big portfolio? So Jim and Mary have got 25 properties that they've accrued over the last 15 years, right? Worth 2 million quid. And their tax advisor says, you really ought to chuck these in a limited company. And they go, all right then. So they go to our learned advisors on the call and go, can you do me an SPV, please, and do this? And then suddenly you go, the tax bill is, boom. And they go, blimey, it's going to take me 150,000 years to get that money back through tax savings because of the cost of going in, right? So incorporation and limited company, there are ways of doing it where potentially the clients could mitigate that stamp duty and capital gain tax, right? And there are 2 things going on effectively here, right? One is the capital gain element, which you can mitigate through what they call an S162 incorporation relief. Okay, what that basically means is when you, let's say you bought the properties for £1 million and they're going in for 2 million, you've got £1 million gain, right? That's a big tax bill, isn't it? So what happens is, provided the shareholding stays the same when it goes in, right? Well, actually, what's going in is it's going into the limited company, so the limited company becomes the legal owner, but Jim and Mary now become the shareholders within, right? And basically, that capital gain becomes shares within the property. So now, let's say they've got 2 million £1 shares in that company, right? £1 million worth of them are bricks and mortar, and the other £1 million is the capital gain, right? And that gain is only a chargeable event if they subsequently sell those shares in the future. So if they, bring another partner in or whatever, or sell a property, then they trigger the gain at that point, plus any additional gain that's accrued, right? So that's the capital gain piece. The stamp duty piece is linked to the Ramsey ruling, which was the definition of a business. So as long as you've got a continuation of a business, you can move a property in and mitigate stamp duty. So the way you do that is you create a partnership. The properties become partnership assets. They have to stay in the partnership for a minimum period of time, and there's some debate around this. And you have to be able to demonstrate that you're doing a certain amount of hours per week under the Ramsey ruling, and there's some debate around this as well. Typically, it's about 20 hours. So lenders like us ask for a minimum of 10 properties in the portfolio so that we're comfortable that you're doing that. But at the point that you go, you leave them in the partnership for 12 months, and then you move them into the limited company and no stamp duty. Now, there's lots of rules around this, and I'm not a tax expert, Nick, and that, clients need clearly to get very bespoke tax advice on this. But, there are a lot of tax advisors that are there, very clued up to this whole process now, and we get a lot of these kind of inquiries coming our way. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for brokers to be talking to clients about this stuff and where opportunity lies, because, for a lot of people, it is going to be beneficial to be in a corporate structure, right? So, I think that's quite exciting. Any questions on that before we move on? Or am I just ready to sleep?
No, we have got one question, but I'm just waiting for the right moment for that one, because it is sort of criteria related. But that's really interesting that, and it certainly gets you thinking, doesn't it? The opportunities within that for things to fit for clients is really interesting, isn't it?
It is. Well, I had a broker come to me. It was in October. I was at a big event. And we'd done a video on this, and we just put it out on our website. And he came up to me and he went, "Oh, Andy, I saw your video." I was like, "Which one?" And he went, "Oh, the one on incorporation." I was like, "Oh, great." He said, I'd never heard of it. He said, so I've gone off and I've spoken to tax specialists, I've done loads of research. I feel like I'm an expert now. I've found so much information about this. He said, and that's all I do. And he said, what's really interesting for me is that my average case size now is 9 cases, not 1, because
Wow.
I'm incorporating portfolios, doing all the lending, and not everything that's going in needs lending, right? But his average caseload size was 9 cases per incorporation. He said, that's all I specialize in. And I'm selling myself as an expert in the space. And I'm getting loads of this stuff coming in, right? Opportunity in the market.
And that's it. And the thing is, if you sell yourself as an expert, you know, of course, you know, you're not going to do that until you've done your sort of the learning you need to do. But of course, who are your competitors? Because, you know, how many other people do you see doing that? You know, real expert in this area. So it's a great opportunity. In fact, I will ask this question because we've kind of, I will. Shailesh Kumar, good morning. Well, good afternoon, even actually. Good morning. So Shailesh Kumar wants to know, do you portfolio cross-charge mortgage for high net worth landlords? So I've got somebody who's looking to remortgage 6 properties under 1 mortgage. So like take a charge over them all. That's quite specialist, isn't it?
It is. That's a great question. And I apologize now. I'm not going to try and pronounce your name because it sounded really complicated, and I apologize. So, but it was a great question. We don't cross-charge or have a unilateral charge on properties. I'm going to come back to the limited company piece in a minute because I've got some more stuff to say. But let's just tap into this because there's a really good sector that I want to talk about as well. I can't remember if it might come up in the slides in a minute, so we're jumping around, but that's fine. Up until a couple of years ago, we had a max loan amount to an individual of 5 million, right? We had a case come to us where the client was looking to incorporate into a limited company through this process, right? They had 58 properties with 13 million quid worth of lending on it. Now, what was interesting about this case was all of those properties were sitting in our back book. You know, we're talking about Topaz, right? They're all sat in our back book. So the broker spoke to one of my colleagues and said, look, we've got this deal. And the client, you know, you've got some cracking rates. Client wants to come to you. So my colleague went to our risk team and said, look, what do you reckon? So the risk team had a really good meeting with the client. We spoke to the funder. We knew the client anyway because they were in our back book, and we knew they were really great clients. Went and had a look at some of the properties. Actually, interesting. Some of them were outside of policy because they were below our minimum property value. But because it was the whole thing, we went, you know what? We'll take a view. So we did the whole thing. We had the underwriter, had a weekly meeting with the client, the solicitor, and the broker, and I had a risk. So we had a weekly meeting. We got them offered in 3 weeks, all 58 properties, right? Now, to answer the question specifically, the good news is we can do large lending, right? I quoted another client over 50 million on over 100 properties. Not many lenders will go to that size of lending to one client, right? And we're not going to do it for every client. You know, it's very bespoke, but we don't do individual charges. We don't do a cross collateral charge. We do an individual charge, and there's pros and cons, right? What are the cons? You've got loads of keying to do, but just think about the property, right? You've got loads of keying to do, but we can help you with that on a big deal, right? What are the potential cons of cross collateral charging? Well, it doesn't apply to all lenders, but very often when you've got a cross collateral charge, if you decide to take one of those property out of that charging environment, you don't only have to clear the loan on or the value of the charge on that particular asset, but often the lender will ask for some of that equity to reduce the loan across the remaining properties within the charging environment, right? So, you know, if you've got 50 grand's worth of equity, you might only walk away with 40 grand or 35. So again, it's definitely something to investigate if you go down that single charge route, right? We don't do it, but we do large lending and we can help you with the keying process. And then obviously if a client does want to take a property out of that environment, fine. It's just one property coming out and they clear the loan and away they go. But while we're on the subject of large loans like that, our background stress test is excellent because we only got 100% rental cover. So provided your rental income from the whole portfolio is equal to or greater than the mortgage payment currently on that portfolio, it fits. Not 125 at 5.5 or all this stuff, right? So we've got a great background stress test. So I think our portfolio proposition is excellent. We've got some other stuff going on at the moment. I'd be lynched if I said what it was because it's not been signed off yet, but it's exciting. So watch this space. But that was a great question. So hopefully I've sort of tidied it up in all of that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Andy.
No worries. So I just want to, sorry.
Shailesh Kumar says thank you. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, really, really great question. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So I just want to go back into limited companies. I'm so excited about this. Share purchase.
Oh.
What's that all about? Share purchase. This is exciting development for Zephyr Home Loans, right? We've currently got 2 test cases going through, and they're looking like they're going well at the moment. And the plan is to incorporate this into full-blown policy, right? So what's this all about? So we've got a case at the moment where there are 5 properties in a limited company, and the property values are 1.6 million. What the client wants to do is to buy the company rather than the assets, because there's only a 0.5% stamp duty on a share purchase.
I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say about this, Andy, because as soon as this limited company thing came in, I said, okay, where's this going? And if you think about when landlords want to, essentially, rather than selling individual properties, you're going to sell the company because it's much more tax efficient, isn't it? They pay the stamp duty to put them in a limited company. So I am listening keenly on this one because I saw this years ago.
Well, there are, in effect, what's going on here are 2 transactions. We won't lend to buy shares. Let's just be clear about that. But we can help with this transaction. I'll explain how we do it. Okay. There are 2 transactions going on. Transaction number 1 is the share purchase. Now, the first thing to be aware of, guys, is your legal cost is going to be significantly more doing a share purchase transaction than it is doing property purchase transactions. Property purchase transactions, 10, 100 a dozen or whatever it is, right? Share purchase transactions, much more complex. What are you thinking about? Well, what skeletons are in that company cupboard? You need to be 100% sure as the new directors going in that you're not inheriting a load of noise that's going to really, really mess you up, right? So your solicitor has got to do a lot of work, and it's a very specialist environment to work in to make sure that company is absolutely kosher, right? There's also an accountancy work involved to check all the accountancy side of the business and all this stuff. So there's several sets of fees there. So you've got that going on one side of the fence. Then on the other side of the fence, you've got us lot as the lender getting mortgages ready to secure against the assets, right? So what do? We then underwrite the ingoing directors, right? And the solicitors are doing all the work on that side, and they're doing all the work on the other side for the outgoing directors and the share purchase and checking the company, etc., etc. So on the day of completion, we release the funds into the solicitor's account, right? They now have the money to complete the share purchase. So now old directors are gone. New directors own the limited company because they've given the solicitors money to complete the transaction. It's not gone to the directors' solicitors yet, but it's there ready to go, right? So the completion is effectively happening. Now the new directors are in there. Who owns the assets? Well, there hasn't been a change of ownership of assets because they were only ever owned by the limited company. It's just a change of directors. So now what we do is facilitate a next day remortgage immediately and secure our charges against the assets within by way of a next day refinance. Da-dum, complete.
That's good. Yeah. See, and this, so you've got so obviously the test cases that are going through, and obviously you'll be watching them massively with interest, because this is going to become more popular, isn't it? As people, people's sort of reasons for owning, a lot of the time, people's reasons for owning, property is pension investment. A lot of people, I know from when I was a broker, people say, oh, it's a pension pot. And people are going to get to that age and they want to realise those assets, sell those properties, sell the shares in the company. So that is really interesting. Another question, actually, Shailesh Kumar again. Can the current limited company sell their shares to his own other new limited company? That's another good question. Morning, I'll tell you, this afternoon even.
Right. Well, we wouldn't get involved in that because that's not a structure that we would lend within. because you then in effect you're creating company layering, right? The simple answer is I don't think I'm in a position to be able to answer that question properly because I'm not a tax advisor and it's not my realm. Okay, my non-Zephyr brain says I can't see a reason why that wouldn't be possible. But again, they'd have to take very bespoke tax advice on why are they doing it and what are they creating and what's the rationale behind it and where are they trying to get to from a tax position. That's the question, right? And there may be a reason why they're going that route, and there'd be, I don't see why it's not, because you see company layering on a regular basis, right? Where you've got a holding company at the top and an SPV underneath or whatever, and money's moving back and forth. We don't lend in that environment at all, and we don't lend where it's a trading limited company, but we facilitate that by a slightly different way by creating intercompany loans. So what we often see, I mean, there are other reasons for doing this, and I was chatting to somebody earlier about the fact that sometimes if you own a freehold and you want to create leases, you can't give yourself a lease. So sometimes you'll get company layering where company A owns and company B is then the leaseholder, and they're doing it that way. So there's reasons why they do it, but more often than not, what we see is that the trading limited company or the parent company at the top has a sum of money that they want to use to facilitate buying property. But the problem that they've got is if they take that money out of the company, it's then taxable as income. Yeah. So if it goes down through the structure, or it's an or it's a trading limited company, then obviously it's being dealt with in a slightly different way. We can manage that by an intercompany loan. So as long as the shareholding directors are the same, shareholders and directors are the same in both companies, you can do an intercompany loan. You're not allowed to borrow for a deposit. But in the case of an intercompany loan, as long as no payments are made whilst our charge is on the property. So let's say they take a 25-year mortgage out with a 5-year fixed rate with Zephyr, do an intercompany loan. After 5 years, they then remortgage away to another provider in the market. At that point, they can then start paying those loan payments back and charge interest. So you're back to almost like a director's loan account kind of scenario. Pulling the money back out. So that can work. So there's a different way of managing it, but we do see a lot of these kind of structures. They are difficult. So we don't currently play in that space. That's not to say that we never will, but I know there are lenders that do it. So it's just, this is why we're all in the game, right? To give different solutions to
absolutely. Thank you for that question. Really good question.
Just one last thing to say on that share purchase thing. The case we've got going through at the moment. So the legal fees, right? I think if you looked at the legal fees on their own, probably be about £8,000, 7 or 8 grand if they're buying the properties. But because they're buying the company, with all the fees wrapped up, 30,000, right? But that's still a 50 grand stamp duty saving.
Yeah, and this is the thing, isn't it? This is the thing. It's look, at the end of the day, you're talking big money anyway, aren't you? With the portfolio properties in limited companies. So, but yeah, concentrate on saving, isn't it?
It is. So, right, just. I'm very conscious of time. So a couple of things. We've talked about some of the stuff we do. We obviously lend to HMOs and multi-unit freehold blocks. There's a lot of noise in the market at the moment about large HMOs and 30 block flats. The value goes out and goes, limited resale. So I think a lot of it's smoke and mirrors, just to say, look, we've upped our game on the amounts of rooms and the amounts of blocks that we do. Look, we only do 6 guys, but we're good at it and we understand it, right? So, we know a lot about HMOs already, but we do locks on doors, no locks on doors. We do bathrooms in the rooms. We do multiple kitchens. We do a single AST across the whole property or multiple AST. So DSS tenants, professional tenants, student lets. We do communal space, no communal space. If the license wants a communal space, we'd want to see it. We do licensed, unlicensed. We understand sui generis. We understand compulsory licensing, all of this sort of stuff. We get it, right? So we're good at HMOs. Multi-units, we're good at those, but we do want separate services into each one. Now, I know some lenders say we're quite happy with a metered environment, but for us, if we go into a possession event, we want the ability to be able to split that block and sell it as separate units. So we need separate services. We're great on flats, Nick. No height restriction on block, massive USP for us. So 20 stories, 40 stories, 60 stories, absolutely fine. That includes XLA, includes deck access. We've talked about SPVs. We've got a no minimum income rule. So if your income is from pension or employed income or self-employed not related to property, we've got a no minimum income rule. If your income is from property only, we want 25 grand gross rental. but your SA 302 could say £3,000, right? So as long as your SA 100 shows 25, you're away. Top slicing, we do that. We do cross portfolio subsidization, which basically lots of long words, which basically means if you bring 4 or 5 properties to Zephyr, 4 fit and 1 short, you can use the income from the other 4 to supplement the one that's short. So another form of top slicing. Gift of deposit, gift of equity, capital raising for any legal purpose, loads of stuff that we do, right? And I think, when you work in the specialist space, it's always like, well, what's your specialism? But, we do the mainstream stuff as well. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, first buy to let, 75% loan to value, terraced house, bish bash bosh, away we go. Now, there are some lenders out there that are more competitive than us, of course. But I always say to clients, if you've got a high-rise block, 35 stories, where'd you go? Limited. Okay, what if it's XLA? No, that's really difficult. Well, what if it's an HMO? That's a Zephyr case. So we're sort of good at wrapping all that complexity together and pulling a deal out of it. So you need to be talking to us though, right? There's another interesting statistic. Completion rates. What are completion rates in our sector? Well, it's about 50%, right? On average, when you look around the market, it's about 50%. But actually, if you talk to your BDM, and this doesn't apply just to Zephyr, right? If you talk to your BDM, your chance of completion on that deal goes up considerably. Why is that? Because we're going to try and find all the holes in the deal before you start. And I'm a great believer in saying, no, it don't fit. Boom. Because I'd rather you go and find a lender that it does fit with. And we always try and recommend other lenders that we think can help as well. And I know a lot of lenders do the same thing. But, if we say yes, then we can fight tooth and nail because we understand what the deal is. We've lifted the hood up and looked underneath. We know what's going on. And then your chances of completion, and I know the worst thing for a broker is a case that doesn't complete. So your chances of completion go up massively when you engage with your BDM. Teaching them suck eggs, right? But I felt I had to say.
No, go for it.
Off a soapbox. So we've talked about rates. Like I say, we've got some great new rates: 80% product, no fee, and then we've got some QR codes there, so people can register on our website, Nick. And please register so that you're ready to go because the TBDMs will get you set up in the background. Our All About Zephyr is our sort of general criteria guide. We've got our underwriting guide there. We've got our submission checklist. I think we're in a good place. We're coming back. We're in a really good place, and we want to play. So, ring us and talk to us because we work across regions. But don't worry about that. If you can't get hold of somebody, just ring someone else. Right? All the guys are here to help get your deals away and help you get them through.
Fantastic. And that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you. And you can tell from the passion alone and the experience that Andy has. The reason now he's head of sales, but his sales teams as well. The people on the sales team, have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and especially around your own criteria as well. There are so many things. It's always worth picking the phone up, isn't it? Always worth having a conversation, especially when you're looking in the specialist areas, as well, limited company lending, HMOs, all of that. It really is worth sitting down with them and upskilling yourself. Hopefully, you've got a lot out of this last hour. I think to be able to have something to be able to talk to your clients about is really, really important, and just gives you that extra little bit. I mean, we're passionate about education here at Knowledge Bank, which is why we run the webinars we do. But it's just amazing when we've got lenders like Zephyr and people like Andy on that can give that knowledge, because where else do you get this from? And as we said earlier, where else do your clients get it from? Nowhere. They're not getting it from anybody else. Nobody else is telling them. Their accountant's not telling them this. That is a fact. Their accountant is not having this conversation with them. They're purely looking at it from a tax position, which is important, but they won't understand the possibilities that Andy and his team can sort of lead you into for your clients. So it's fantastic. Andy, thank you so much. So much to take.
Sorry, I think it's a bit. I was just saying you're welcome. Yeah.
Thanks
you.
For having me. Brilliant. So if anybody does have any other questions, obviously now is your chance to ask them. Well, I'll tell you, now is your chance to ask them, not just now. If we always say people want to ask anything can't even say the word. without saying your name anonymously, you're very welcome to do that. That's fine, because sometimes you don't want to ask a question because I should know this and I don't know if anyone else can see my name. That's always fine. But also, if you want to pick up with Andy and his team as well, there's QR codes are there, take you directly to the website, and you'll be able to see who looks after your area as well. And just have those conversations. I always think, a coffee with a BDM is never time wasted. It's just that education and keeping up on what's happening, because the changes that there have been in the buy-to-let market, and even this year, it's nobody's got an easy ride this year. Last year wasn't easy, and this year's the same, isn't it? It's not nobody's sailing through 2024, are they? It's it's still a challenging market out there, but what will make the difference is the knowledge that you've got. That's what makes a difference. It absolutely does. And as we said, at the beginning as well, he even, like, for example, holding an event, with solicitors, accountant, an estate agent, other people that are in this sector, can really bear fruit and not even have to cost you anything. And use this knowledge of, what you've learned on here and any of the conversations that you can arm yourself with. And, all of a sudden you've got a sort of a merry band of very loyal clients who see you as their expert, which is and as you said, Andy, as well, instantly you start dealing with individual buy-to-lets, you start dealing with portfolios and HMOs, as you showed on that calculation on one of those slides. It makes a huge difference to income, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And actually, if you're plugging into local experts, I mean, I was at an event just after Christmas, and there was a local tax firm. I won't say they were, but they were superb, and their knowledge around the whole incorporation space was incredible. And they did a whole presentation on this, along with other stuff around the tax space. If you start plugging into those guys, guess what they need? Advisors to sort the mortgage side of stuff out, right? So you get a really good relationship with an accountant and a solicitor's firm. It's just massively invaluable. I know when we were running our business, our top introducers were solicitors and accountants. We had loads of them that we worked with. And they were brilliant because they understood what was going on in the client environment, and they recognized the value of plugging into a good advisory base from a mortgage perspective, because they can't keep tabs on the mortgage market any more than we can keep tabs on the tax market properly, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Such a good point, that, Andy. Such a good point. They're experts in their field, aren't they? But obviously the guys that we've got on today are experts in theirs. So absolutely brilliant. And I think we have just, I didn't think we were going to end on time, but you've absolutely nailed it in terms of bringing that presentation back. I thought we'd definitely run over because there's so much to talk about. I don't know if you've managed to cram it into 60 minutes, but you have. And thank you. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for that. And some lovely comments that people saying it's been really helpful. So thank you. I say, if you want any more information, please get in touch with Andy or his team, or you want to clarify any points and take them offline, any conversations, any cases that you want to discuss or work through. Of course, as we always say, Knowledge Bank is a great tool, the best there is, in my humble opinion, to find out where to place those cases. But then, the next step, then have that conversation with the BDM. If you know the intricacies, the real intricacies of, can I do this? Is this possible? This is what got ahead. We had some great questions today. And say, if you want to follow those up, then do get in touch. Andy, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to get to jump on with you. And I think Shane will be gutted that he's missed out, because obviously his days at Dynamo, specialising in the buy-to-let market, I know he will have been looking forward to dating himself. So he will be gutted to have missed out on this, but I feel a little bit lucky to have been able to get on there. Daryl, thank you. Daryl says, thank you for a very informative hour, and Andy, very knowledgeable. He certainly is. If you see him at an event, do make sure that you grab him, because he is a wealth of knowledge in this area. Brilliant. Well, listen, everybody, have a good rest of your Friday. Happy weekend. I hope that's giving you something to think on. So if you want any more information, get in touch. And as I did say as well, if you think you might want to organise the event, you're not sure how to go about it, even contact me. I'm more than happy to help with that. So, we've got a lot of experience in. So, but Andy's your guy, and his team as well. So thank you, everybody. Massive thank you to you, Andy. That's been brilliant. And we will speak to you again soon when we have when we next get together. Well, I'm sure you'll be on a criteria clinic very soon, Andy.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I love them. Absolutely love them. And listen, thanks for having us. We love doing these things as well. Absolutely brilliant for us to showcase what we do, but obviously working with you guys with what you do, the work you do in the market is brilliant. So thank you. Superb.
Thanks, Andy. Right, have a good rest of your day. Have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.